Welcome to the Hastings Harvest Podcast, where I interview some of the most inspiring young minds, creators, and educators around the world and try to harvest and dissect how they go about their craft. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Chris Moore. Chris is someone that I was introduced to on social media, and we share a lot of the same values and beliefs. He's been really helpful in terms of telling me how to grow my Instagram presence, and he's a very big social media dude. He is also a vegan bodybuilder, just like myself, with a physique that I would say is quite better than mine, and his Instagram is currently around 16,000 followers, and he showcases his life as well as fitness tips on his Instagram. Along with that, he also sells workout plans and meal plans just like myself. So if you want to check him out, if you enjoy my page on Instagram, you will love his. It is at more__Chris. That is at MOORE2_Chris. And that is on Instagram. Now, in this podcast, we dive into many different vegan fitness topics, including how his extreme anxiety was cured thanks to a vegan diet, why he works out twice a day, and why the protein myth and amino acid myth is total bullshit. In the second half of the podcast, we talk more about personal development and social media with stuff like his morning and nightly rituals, the 4 books that impacted his life the most, and how to build your social media presence through genuineness. To access all of the resources Chris and I mentioned in the podcast, you can head over to my website. That is seasonedtofu.com/podcast. That's seasonedtofu.com/podcast. With that intro out of the way, I do hope you enjoy the first ever episode of the Hastings Harvest Podcast. All right, Chris, welcome to the Hastings Harvest. Thank you for being my first guest.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm really excited to talk with you. I'm really happy that you chose me to be your first guest, and of course, always glad to get to share a little bit of my story and experience with everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. I believe the last time we talked was on your podcast, so I'm excited to get into this. Now, why don't you just give some background as to what you currently do? I provided some information in the intro, but let's just hear your side of the story. I'm sure you have more to say about it.
Well, of course, everybody should know at this point, my name is Chris. I do primarily online work at this point and sharing, started off with just sharing, a little bit about myself as far as my fitness and plant-based journey is concerned. Um, as you know, I'm pretty sure I had a little bit of like a transformation, I guess you could say, between, before when I was not eating plant-based and now. And I've come from both sides of the spectrum, both really overweight and really thin. So I just have a lot of experience as far as, weight maintaining, or I guess transforming is concerned. And then something that a lot of people also don't know about me is that I'm also a nurse. Again, not practicing currently, just focusing primarily with the online stuff at this point. But that is another bit of, experience that I have in my back pocket that is able to help me with a better understanding of the benefits of the plant-based diet.
Right. And yes, Chris's transformation is crazy. I'm sure I'll link his social media in the show notes, and we'll have him plug it later in the episode. You guys have to check out his Instagram. So I want to start off with talking about veganism and fitness, your fitness journey, and then we'll get more into the business side of it, entrepreneurship, and some personal development type stuff. So what was the moment that you decided to go vegan? Was it a gradual transition for you, or was there just one cataclysmic moment where you were just like, I need to do this?
Something that I didn't mention, I guess, before was a big reason that I decided that I wanted to help people is because, and the reason why I decided to go vegan was because I was having a ton of anxiety problems, as well as a lot of stomach issues. And within, the first couple of weeks of going vegan, I was vegetarian for a month and then decided to go vegan after that. Within the first couple of weeks of going vegan, all of my anxiety issues had pretty much dissipated. Whereas, comparatively speaking, before I was having, daily anxiety attacks that were really disrupting my entire life. I had at that point gone to the doctor and they wanted to give me medications. And I just didn't really want to do that. So I decided to try and figure something different and a lot of different types of research, both whichever way you want to look at it from just a scientific standpoint. There was a lot of research that was showing that um, the plant-based diet was really good at fixing anxiety issues, and then also from more of like, let's say, a spiritual standpoint, but just I don't know, just a lot of things pointed in the direction of there's a lot of negative energy associated in the foods that you're consuming, and maybe that might help things out. So it was just kind of two-sided for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with, the spiritual type stuff. I think you are what you eat is such an obviously true term that people don't take seriously. And it's something that I've definitely experienced as well when I went vegan. Just putting all these good foods into my body has really transformed my mood. So I completely
Yeah,
agree with you there.
it,
Were you
it
about to
may
say
not.
something?
Yeah, I was going to say it may not even just be the spiritual thing, but just obviously whenever you have more respect and you're more cognizant of what you're consuming. Not only the fuel that you're putting in your body is obviously going to make you feel better, but you're going to feel better about yourself because you know that you're treating yourself right, and and so I think that obviously plays a large role in the mood and the overall well-being and feeling that you get from the plant-based diet as well.
Absolutely. So, what was your body and mind's initial reaction to going vegan, and how does it compare to how it makes you feel now? Is there any difference from when you first started to right now?
I think I would say personally for me, obviously it was. I don't want to use like the word euphoric. It's not like I was on a high, but I had resolved such serious health issues that just my overall sense of well-being in the initial stages, like mentally, and just like
Yeah.
my my attitude, my energy levels, everything were just completely 180 from where they were at, prior to going vegan. I was dealing with so many stomach problems that were causing me a lot of physical pain, which was disrupting my sleep. So I was just constantly exhausted, and because I was constantly exhausted, I was mentally miserable. So there was a lot of snowball effect going on in that department. Whereas just after all of those things were resolved, you can imagine it be like I think the best way to describe it is like euphoria. Like holy crap, I feel so much better. Now I obviously not riding that high anymore because you know after a while that just becomes a part of your past. Those physical ailments that you no longer are dealing with. I'm still grateful every day and for not having to deal with that stuff anymore. Um, but I would still say the difference is that like now I work out a ton and again in comparison to a lot of people. And as far as being fatigued constantly or anything like that, I think that the plant based diet gives me the edge to do way more than my meat eater counterparts. I would say.
hmm Yeah, that sounds like a vicious cycle where you had the anxiety, and the reason you had the anxiety was because you weren't sleeping, and then the anxiety made you sleep worse. And yeah,
Yeah.
I guess the diet also helped with your sleep. You said correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, just from the standpoint of the stomach problems that I was having, basically it was causing me to wake up like every morning at say around 4. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning every single day. I was waking up and I was just in excruciating pain, like just just really really bad stomach pains. Like it was not like really any other symptoms, just intense pain that I was dealing with on a daily basis. And then the desire to not want to take those medications was very strong for me.
hmm Yeah, I probably would have done the same if I was in your position. I'm not one to really like to take medications for things, although it is definitely necessary for some types of things. Um, so I guess let's talk about more about your fitness routine. So, what is your current macro setup?
Um, Basically, at this point, I just finished up. I say I just finished a bulk. I've been slowly transitioning from bulking to maintaining slash cutting. Um, but I was long story short, I had just moved to Long Beach, which is in Los Angeles County. And if you've been vegan for a while, you know that this area is a really hot spot for just a lot of amazing vegan food. So I
Hmm.
took advantage of that and I bulked really hard. And I mean, I was working out a ton. I was working out like twice a day, every single day, lifting like two full lifting sessions. Um, and I put on a lot of size. I was about 175 before, and I bulked almost to 200 pounds. Um, right, maybe like 198, 199.
Hmm.
Now that I'm ready to start leaning back out again, I'd say I've probably been cutting. Like I say, maintaining cutting. I'm riding like right along, eating about maintenance for me right now, which is I would say 2,800 calories a day. But just I'm back to lifting twice a day again. I took about a month and a half off from that, and then also doing about 30 minutes of cardio a day. I don't necessarily think that it's necessary for people to lift or exercise at the level that I do. I just have a lot of time on my hands and am trying to
Hmm.
maintain, for my size, a naturally large amount of weight. I would say, you know.
Yeah, that's an insane amount of volume that you're doing each day and cardio on top of that. Wow, that's nuts, but it'll definitely help you reach your goals quicker. And if you find that it works for you, then keep doing it. So, do you track the fat intake, the carbs, the protein as well?
I do. Whenever I was bulking, I would just spot check myself throughout the week just to see. I wasn't too concerned with it as long as I was still gaining weight. But now that I'm trying to, maintain. Really, when I say maintain or cut, really my goal is just like the dream. Not lose any weight, but just burn fat off. Right. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
so now that I'm doing that, I pay a lot closer attention to what I take in every day. And I use my Fitness Pal. I feel like that's the easiest way if you really are serious about your goals to do it quickly. As far as efficiency is concerned. And I'm not saying that again, like it just depends on how stringent your goals are. If you're just trying to gain weight or you just want to lean out a little bit, then no, I don't think that you have to track. But I was prepping for a competition before, and I just like the regimented feel of everything. And so, yeah, I use
Hmm.
my Fitness Pal every day. I try and stay below like 45 grams of fat a day, which comes out to about 10 to 15%, somewhere in that area. Um, I eat about 150 to 160 grams of protein a day, which I believe is about 20% protein, and then the rest of it is carbs. Which is, what was that, 20 or 15, 20, 35. So, yeah, about 65% carbs a day, which usually comes out to pretty close to 500 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah, that's around what I eat as well. Very nice. Okay. And also, for anyone listening, I definitely recommend you use MyFitnessPal like Chris does if you are struggling to gain or lose weight. If it's not going easy for you, you should definitely start tracking very meticulously because there's something that you're doing wrong. And MyFitnessPal is the best way to see what's going on and see what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, man, I get that question like a lot as on through my Instagram page. I get people that ask me all the time, like, oh, it's actually more people that can't gain weight than lose weight. They'll say, I'm just struggling to put on size, and I feel like I'm eating constantly. And then I get some people that'll say, I want to lose weight desperately, and I'm eating this many calories a day, and I'm like, okay, well, how are you tracking? Well, I'm not using anything to like record. I'm like, okay, well, are you weighing your foods? And I would say at least 90% of the time the answer is no. So
Hmm.
you have to, if you're serious about your goals and you're not getting the progress like you said that you're seeing, then the first place that you got to look at is your intake, and see and be honest with yourself about how much you're really getting, because it's just so easy to overestimate or underestimate even on foods, especially if you're new to it. I've been doing it for years, tracking my food, so I have a better idea on how to eyeball something. But if this is your first month, you might as well just get a food scale, get my fitness pal, and just get used to doing it now. That's my opinion.
I completely agree. I tell people all the time the reason I don't track macros is because I'm so used to eating all the same foods. I know I've measured them before and I can guess what the calories are like. So I know what to eat. And if you are not experienced in it, you've got to be doing everything that Chris said for sure. So now let's get into your workout routine. What is your current workout routine? What is the split that you do if you do a split?
Yeah, I do just push pull legs. And my push and my days will vary. It's not necessarily that every single push day I go in and do the exact same routine, but for the most part, it's relatively the same. The one that I think changes more often is the push day, just because, say, I do push pull legs twice a week. The first push day would be more chest centric and maybe just a set of dumbbell flies, and then my second push day will be um, more shoulder centric and maybe just like a set of incline bench press in there, just so that way they're still getting that, a little bit of volume in there. And then if I go back in the afternoons and work out again, which like as of right now I've been doing for a little bit again, um, I won't now do a full routine in the afternoon. I'll just pick, say, two or three exercises from the morning, and just put, I would say, like 50% of my max on the bar, not heavy at all, and then just do, four sets of 12 to 15 on each exercise, really light, go through the full range of motion, and just basically to get more volume in. My overall goal is hypertrophy, so I'm just looking for the most volume I can get in without getting injured.
Good. Yeah, I like that a lot. How you go back, kind of do the same exercises, but instead focus on the range of motion. I think a lot of people neglect their form and just ego lift, and they're not seeing results because of it. I really suggest that everybody listening looks up YouTube tutorials of different exercises, the exercises you want to do. If you're not totally sure you're doing them right, the form videos on YouTube can really help a lot with that. I know that I've basically learned how to do every exercise I know how to do from YouTube. So definitely suggest looking up the form before you go and do a specific exercise.
Yeah, no matter what your goals are, I mean, if you're looking for hypertrophy because your main goal is that you want to look good and big, you want that full range of motion so that the muscle will be fully developed. And if your goal is strength, again, the full range of motion is going to prevent you from, or being able to perform a full range of motion is going to prevent you from plateauing a lot sooner. Because if you're lifting improperly, eventually that's going to catch up to you. You're not going to be able to compensate by recruiting other muscle groups into your lift through, say if you're benching two plates, eventually you're going to hit a certain number that's going to be like, okay, now I've got to drop it back down and actually refocus on lifting the proper way, or else you're just going to stick there forever. So no matter what your goals, it's good.
Right. So, what is your favorite vegan dish? I'm interested to know.
So man, that's really tough. Because to be honest, if I had to pick like just a general group, I don't want to say boring because I use a lot of seasonings, but I really just like a big veggie bowl. Like it's so simple, but it's got to be one of my favorite things. Just like beans and lentils, sweet potatoes. Maybe if I'm a little short on protein, maybe some seitan or TVP, something like that to add a little protein into it, and then seasoning with whatever you like. But that's honestly like I would say I eat that every single day just about because I love it so much. Now, if I had to pick my favorite junk food, I'm sure like vegan junk food is donuts all day long, man. And I think everybody who knows me knows
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that for the junk food.
that. Yeah, man,
But
I'm a donut.
I yeah, I agree slightly with the whole bowl thing. Like you can just throw anything and call it a throw any type of plants in and call it a Buddha bowl, and it's usually just amazing. I'm a really big fan of burritos myself, so
Yeah,
I mean, as long if you take out the wrap, then it's essentially a Buddha bowl, you know. So yeah, definitely just a bunch of different mix of veggies in a bowl is just so good with some type of sauce. So now I'd like to know, since we know your favorite vegan dish, what is your favorite vegan restaurant near you?
oh, there's a couple of spots right here by me, but I would say my favorite place up until more recently was a place that was called Takaya, and they just have vegan options. But any vegan Mexican food is going to be my go-to. They have another place up the road that does like big it's called Cena Vegan. They actually are at most of the festivals around here. But they do huge burritos, like bigger than the Chipotle burritos. And they make their own mock meats and everything. And man, it is so good. Gracias Madre, that's another vegan spot around here, vegan Mexican restaurant. And again, it's killer. And then oh, another favorite food is just smoothie bowls, man, like acai bowls. And they have a place here called Blue Bowl that is just, dude, phenomenal.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to visit some of those places. I also think smoothie bowls are awesome. I don't think I've ever had a smoothie bowl from anywhere. Like I've always just made it myself, so it would definitely be nice to get a new perspective on it. But in terms of Mexican food, I absolutely agree. Mexican food's probably my favorite as well. It's just so vegan friendly, and I just love all the foods that come with it. So
And it's
yeah.
so flavorful. Is you're not like no matter what it is that you're eating that's Mexican usually has just such a ton of flavor. Same thing with like Indian foods, Thai foods, things that that rely heavily on a lot of fragrant spices.
Hmm.
Anything that is killer to me.
Completely agree. So, what do you wish you would have known when starting veganism? What could have helped you first starting out?
Um, I wish I would have paid closer attention in the beginning to the amount of fat that I was taking in. To be completely honest, I switched to I cook with no oil or anything like that, and I had done the same thing when I initially switched, but I was just consuming. It's hard to get your calories when you don't know what to eat, so you're automatically looking for dense caloric sources. And
Hmm.
I wasn't eating completely raw when I switched over to vegan, but I was eating, I would say about 80% raw foods initially as well, and then just getting my proteins from more like the like tempehs and tofu, maybe some TVP, seitan, stuff like that. But that was mainly where my cooked stuff was coming from. So needless to say, I was eating just a lot of like nut butter, seeds, nuts, stuff like that that was causing me to take in like a considerably larger amount of fat than I eat right now. And the only reason, again, I wish I had known that sooner was just because it opened my diet up to being able to eat so many more carbs. So then I was able to eat such larger meals and feel much more satiated throughout the day, I would say.
So, was your reason for wishing you didn't eat as much fat because of the whole carb thing? You wanted to feel more satiated through smaller calories, or is it because you think consuming too much fat has bad health consequences?
Um, I mean, consuming too much fat does have poor health consequences, but I would say that the types of fats that we're taking in are probably a little bit more important. But overall, the way that I feel whenever I eat a low fat diet versus the way that I feel when I eat a high fat diet, plus again the satiety of the situation, I just feel like it's really easy to eat. I mean, if you're eating 25%, 30% fat in a day, which is really easy to do when you're not tracking, um, that's a large, what is it, 9 calories per gram of fat. And there's
Something
only
like that.
4 calories. Yeah, and there's 4 calories per gram of protein and per gram of carbs. So basically, you can eat twice as many grams of carbs as you can, or twice as many grams of fat, I mean, of protein, for every gram of carb, or geez, I got that tongue tied. For every gram of fat that you cut out, you can eat 2 grams of the others. So you can just imagine the higher volume, basically, that you're able to take in, which is something that I really like. I used to be really overweight, and old habits die hard. Um, so I always like to eat really big meals, and that's why I was big before. And so now that's my way of being able to stay in my caloric needs without overdoing it.
Yeah, I think the unanimous decision in the vegan community is that low fat, high carb will make you feel the best. And I would say I agree. Although sometimes I do eat more fat than I should, and it's still okay some days, but you should definitely aim for a higher carb like Chris and I eat if you are vegan. All right. So what are some of the common myths about a vegan diet that you hear all the time, and can you debunk them for us?
Um, I think the one that most guys that are in fitness hear is that you're not going to be able to get enough protein, or you're not going to be able to gain size. And lastly, more recently, I've been hearing a lot of that. Oh, well, you can't get all your complete you can't get all your amino acids on a vegan diet.
Hmm.
I've never had, I've never tracked my aminos. I've put my food into to what is not my fitness pal, but there's another tracking program, and I can't believe I'm going to blank out on it right now. But basically, this other one gives you can even give you a breakdown of your aminos, and it's not necessarily that you hit 100% of all your aminos every single day, but more over a long term. And over tracking, I've never seen that I've had any issues hitting my aminos. As far as protein is concerned, the general consensus used to be like you need a gram to 2 grams of of protein per pound of body weight. And now the science, even though it's been around, people are finally starting to realize that really what you need is about zero point 0.8 grams per lean pound of body mass, which is a big difference. It comes out to that's like less than half the amount of protein that most people were shooting for. Whereas, so I used to lift when I was in high school, and I would say that I was trying to eat like 225 grams of protein a day. Where now I shoot for about 150, 160, and that's to maintain 190 pounds. Whereas before I was 235 pounds and I was way overweight, not muscular, and trying to lose weight. So you can see the difference in the the goals or the outcome as to what was going on. Um, there's a lot of science that supports zero point 0.8 grams of protein, and plenty of guys subsist on a lot less than that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually usually only eat like zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 grams per pound of my body weight. And I don't notice any difference in the efficiency of gaining muscle or how much muscle I've gained. I think it's exactly the same as it was when I was a meathead and trying to get 1 to 2 grams per pound. I think, again, that's still just such a big myth. And in terms of what you said about amino acids, I've never tracked them either, but I believe the app you were talking about or trying to talk about was Chronometer, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
that is an app that allows you to track your amino acids. But again, if you're just eating a wide variety of vegetables, of these legumes, seeds, nuts, whole grains, you're going to hit all your amino acid targets pretty much every single day. So it's not really something to worry about. That's something I've been hearing a lot as well on my page. So I'm glad you cleared that up. What?
And obviously another big one that you hear is that it's difficult to get the protein, even if they're not worried about necessarily the amount of protein. I get a lot of messages from guys that are like, it's like a combination. It's hard, guys and girls. It's hard to get the amount of protein that I need without going way over on my carbs. And I I know that I have some faux meats and things at my hands that maybe other people don't, but I use those for the sake of convenience. I don't use all that stuff on a daily basis. I think that if you plan your stuff out ahead of time, if you really feel like you need to track your protein, um, which I don't think it's necessarily 100% necessary for people who aren't shooting for like professional level goals. Um, but if you're having a scoop of protein a day and then you're just making sure that you hit your calories, I would be willing to put my money on that nearly every day you're getting more than a sufficient amount of protein without needing to track it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, especially like you said, if you're not even trying to bodybuild or be an athlete, you're like you could eat not even or super healthy and you'd still get the recommended amount of protein in for a regular person. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, I want to go on to talking about more so personal development stuff, business type stuff, how you've succeeded on social media because you are around 16,000 followers, I believe, right now, which is very
Yeah,
impressive.
thank you.
First, first let's start off with maybe if you have any rituals. Do you have any morning or nighttime rituals?
I mean, everything for me, as silly as it sounds, revolves around my gym life. To be completely honest, and just because that's where my journey or my passion comes from. So usually, if I'm on point with everything, I would say that since all my social media started with Instagram, I'll usually try and have my posts ready the night before whenever I go to bed. That way, I wake up in the morning. I am able to just throw my post up on Instagram. Not that I haven't thought it out; it was just thought out the day before, and then get my butt out the door and go to the gym, go work out for about an hour and a half, and then again, with everything revolving around the gym, eating well, making sure all that's taken care of, so that way I have the energy to do what I need to do for work. Um, most of my, I would say, the majority of my work revolves around not training clients, but coaching services, meal planning, and things like that. So just I don't have any set days or a set schedule for anything, just because that's the way that I like to. That's how I like my life to be structured. It's just kind of how whenever I have clients, new clients that come up, I just make sure to knock it out as soon as it comes up. That way, it's not something that can sit for days and then wait for to the last minute and feel rushed about anything. I like to give everybody the attention that they deserve. Um, but that's really it. I mean, as far as building your online platform, it's just about consistency. So just making sure that you're doing something every single day.
Right. Completely agree with consistency. What are the 3 to 5, or maybe you can't even think of 3 to 5, but what are the 3 to 5 books that have impacted your life the most?
Well, the first the first one I would say would be the book that really helped me go vegan, which was Eating Animals. I can't tell you the guy's name off the top of my head. I'm trying to pull it up as we speak, but the book basically just broke things down in a very numbers way, which is something that always speaks to me is numbers. And it was just a lot of health information, a lot of environmental information, and that book really made me think about things in a different light. So that would be the first one. Let's see what else.
I know
Oh,
you
this guy's Jonathan Ford. I just read so many books. Own the Day. That was one by Aubrey Marcus that Um, really helped me focus on getting to like not necessarily. It's kind of like the routines that you were talking about, but just planning things out the right way so that way a day goes the way that you want it to. Another really influential book for me. I've probably bought this for almost every single person is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Um,
great book.
that really helped me with, yeah, that one helped me a lot with my, like, more with my personal life than, I mean, it bleeds over into business and business relationships. But just more as far as like my personal outlook on life and overall like the 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 positivity versus negativity. That probably was one of the most hugely influential books. And then lastly, I would say The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've ever read that one
I've heard of
before.
it.
Let's see that. I'm trying to think of the guy's name who wrote that one, but The Four Agreements is by Don Miguel Ruiz, and yeah, that one's a really good one. It's kind of told in like a fiction kind of, if I remember correctly. It's almost written like fiction, but it has a large storyline behind it with a lot of insight as far as life is concerned. There's a lot of things that I've pulled from that book over time. The biggest thing for me that I got from it was not taking things personally. And basically, I think the sentence in the book is don't take anything personally, and to develop that thought a little bit more, basically meaning like no matter what somebody's behavior or action towards you is, it's really just a projection of their own interpretation of a situation. So no matter what, it's not necessary. I mean, yes, of course, your behaviors affect others, but if you're doing your best and you're not getting, or you are getting a certain type of response, it's not necessarily because of, it's almost never because of you, but because of how the other person sees things. So that's helped take a lot of stress out of my life, I guess.
I love that, and I think we can all improve on something like that. Realizing that if someone's angry towards you, insulting you, it's really just a reflection of how they feel about themselves. And that book by Aubrey Marcus, I've never heard before, but I know who Aubrey Marcus is. I believe he founded On It, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
he's a great guy. I've listened to a podcast with him and Tim Ferriss before. Seems like a really cool guy. So I definitely might have to check that one out for sure. Now let's start talking about your social media. So, what do you wish you would have known when starting out? What could have saved you a lot of trouble when you first started out?
Um, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was knowing that I needed to put, you need to post content, obviously, but the consistency of posting content
Hmm.
and not treating, I mean, obviously social media is social and you have to talk with people and you have to respond to comments and messages. And not that you have to do it if you want to. If not, then don't do social media. But I mean, if you want to be active in the social media community, you want to be successful in social media as far as is concerned, you have to actually be social. Um, a lot of people think they're just going to post a picture and then it's going to go somewhere. Obviously, you have to have quality content. That was another thing, where before I might just take a picture of anything. Um, Being really genuine, I think that, I mean, these are all things that I do, currently do, just because I don't just look at I mean, obviously, I continue and I do things on my social media on a daily basis because it's my livelihood as well. But once I started treating it more like a personal, not necessarily a diary. It's not like I tell Instagram everything, but when I started to treat things more genuinely, I saw more of an organic growth because people were actually, you know, able to relate to what I had going on in my life, and I was able to help them. So yeah, I think those are really important things.
Definitely.
Being genuine, being consistent, and sticking to your word with whatever you're telling people that you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to reemphasize what you said about being social because it is social media. I think at first I also didn't engage as much with my audience, and that is just one of the most important things to do. Like you said, you can't just post a picture and just go away, just keep posting pictures. If you're not interacting with the people who want to see your content, you're not going to build a valuable audience. It's going to be a very superficial relationship that you have with your audience, and they're not going to want to stick around very long. So, completely agree with that.
It's such a it's such a weird thing to say, but for me, like I noticed the most growth was whenever I started to behave like an influencer, and I don't ever really like to use that term just
Yeah,
for a
me
couple of
either.
reasons. Like I'm totally happy and blessed to have 16,000 people that are interested in my journey, my story, that support me, and I'm grateful for everybody that does. With that being said, there's people that are out there with 16 million followers. So the term influencer is such a relatively loose term nowadays. Um, I don't like to use it. With that being said, I started to behave more like an influencer and treat my page more like it wasn't like something that I used to keep up with my high school friends, and more of something that I knew was a valuable tool that would allow me to connect to way more people than I had ever had an opportunity to connect with in any other fashion, and to not squander that opportunity, basically. Um, and so if people message me, I make sure that I message them back with a genuine response. If people are taking their time out to, as little as it is, if people are taking their time out to send me thoughtful comments and messages, remarks, positivity, all that stuff, then I need to be just as thoughtful and considerate in my responses to them. So, um, I think that really made the difference. Where, like you said before, it was like, okay, post this online. You're not really worried too much about the response. Now it's not that I care about how many likes or comments I get because it's fulfillment, but I care because I want to show, be grateful to the people that are taking their time out to connect with my journey. So I look forward to seeing the responses that I get from people and messages and things like that.
Yeah, me too. It really has brought a lot of happiness into my life interacting even with people online. It's great to meet so many people through this tool. So, definitely agree with that. Are there any resources you suggest the listeners check out if they're maybe trying to start an Instagram page or just trying to start doing what me and you do?
I mean, YouTube's is your best friend. I think there's a lot of unfortunately because there's so many people that want to work online. I mean, it's not unfortunate. It's the way things are headed because of automation and things like that, where we have to create value outside of um, production of items. And we have to be able to add value into each other's lives and others in other ways. So I think that as time goes by, you're going to see more and more and more influencers just because there's so many niche, categories for people to be influential and to give insight. And so I think that's great. But with that being said, YouTube is kind of saturated with a lot of misinformation. It's only as far as social media is concerned. There's a bunch of the big guys. I think just finding the motivation to stick to it is the biggest thing. It's not. I don't think it's rocket science. I think there's just a handful of rules that you follow as far as not necessarily any format or anything for your type of posting, just about being genuine, being consistent, and being patient. And anybody can grow their following just by following those couple of rules. I really feel like obviously some people grow faster than others because either their story is more, you know, whatever, has more of a draw to it, or these people have the right connections. I wouldn't fall into the trap of spending too much money on anything until you have an established reason to do so. You don't have to have the best laptop. You don't have to have the best camera. You don't have to have the best of anything. I have never bought it. I've been doing it for a year and a half, and I still just use my iPhone to take pictures. I have a $20 microphone for my podcast, and I record any YouTube or anything that I do. I record that on my phone as well. So, again, I don't think spending money is the key to it either. It's just being genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many people that are like, I just don't have the money to start X, or I don't have the resources to start this. But really, you can even start YouTube with just your phone. Like the camera quality on iPhones now is so good that you can just start it with literally just your phone. You don't need fancy equipment. That can come later on in the line, but the important thing is that you just start, keep being consistent, and patience. Like you said, patience is so important. It's not going to be an overnight success. Those that doesn't really exist. So you do have to be patient. Eventually your time will come. Sometimes all it takes is just that one post or that one video.
Yeah, I was before we started recording the podcast, I was watching like a little Gary V IGTV video, and if anybody listening doesn't know who Gary V, just go check out his Instagram if you want to get like really really motivated. I like him, like Tom Bilyeu, obviously Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss. All these guys are very motivational and not just in like the "oh you can do it," but like with a lot of a lot of advice that is pertinent to what if you're trying to build an online business. That's a really those are really good resources. But the Gary V video, basically, a girl asks him, what's the key to creating consistent viral content? And he was like, going viral is the dream, but you know, because it's just like winning the lottery. Like nobody wants to put in the work; they just want to have the followers. They want to have that response. So the patience and not necessarily worrying about having a million followers in 6 months, and going viral and just paying attention to how consistent the content that you deliver to people. I think that's obviously your growth is going to be slower, but it's going to be organic and it's going to be much more meaningful. And the people who are following you are still going to be paying attention to you in 3 months, 6 months, a year, etc. Where if you go viral, those people are paying attention to you because it's what's cool today. And in 2 days, it's your old news again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think not trying to just create viral content and trying to create value for people is really the most important thing you can do to build an audience that cares in the next day, just like you said. So, apart from being genuine, being consistent, being patient, what are some really detailed tactics that you found have driven the most amount of followers and engagement to you on Instagram?
Just collaborate. You have to work with people in the community that whatever your particular community. For me, the plant-based community, fitness community. Um, you have to be with those people for people to stay interested. Obviously, there's some niches that will be okay for you to be completely isolated, but the only way that you're ever going to reach larger numbers of people is by reaching outside of your current scope. So if you're constantly only blasting information to the people who already follow you, eventually they're just people. People don't pay as much. The retention rate is not that high. I mean, it's 2019, right? And people's attention span is super short, mine included. Not, I'm not picking on anybody. That's just the way that we've trained our brains with the massive amount of information that we have in our hands constantly,
Hmm.
is to disregard it very quickly. So you've gotta put your information out there to groups that are outside of your normal, reach. Um, and the best way to do that is to collaborate with others, so that way they can share your message with other people and you can help them out as well. And again, I keep saying be genuine just because I think it's one. Obviously, there's some outliers that don't care and they've still made it big, but I think the biggest names in social media are there because they really do care about what they do and they put thought into what they're trying to make happen. Their collaborations, they don't just collaborate because it's a good business move. They collaborate because they, for the most part, they mesh with the person that they're trying to collaborate with. Um, so I think that's a big part of it, though, is really getting out there and working with the community, whatever your niche is.
Yeah, collabs are huge. And I think a lot of people listening will be pretty surprised as to just how many big influencers, big content creators actually reply back and are okay with collabing, even if it's just something as little as shout out for shout out on your Instagram story. It can have a really huge impact on getting a new following. There was actually this one account that had like 130,000 followers. Her name's so underscore plant based. She must have found my account randomly on the explore page, and
Hmm.
she, without me even asking, she posted me on her story, and I got hundreds of followers just from her posting me on her story, and it's incredible. So definitely just make sure you're being seen and do those collabs like Chris said. Now I'd like to finish off by maybe asking some pretty specific personal questions, just something to get your brain moving a little bit more. So, what is something that you think is true that nobody else agrees with you on?
Oh, that's tough. Something that I think is true that nobody else agrees on.
Or maybe just a small amount of people agree with you?
Well, I'm always into crazy conspiracy theories, but I think more people are starting to agree with me about the benefits of CBD and marijuana overall. I don't think that that's too taboo anymore, but I feel like my whole life it's been an uphill battle, especially as a nurse, trying to convince other people that there's a lot of real benefit to both, the psychoactive and non-psychoactive forms of cannabis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a pretty big cannabis advocate as well, hoping it becomes legal soon in New York State. So,
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
yeah.
It, it's crazy. It's crazy how easily accessible it is, and yet still so illegal.
Yeah,
But
that's very true.
even if you're not trying to use the psychoactive versions of things, this CBD, I still hear because I work with a company personally, and I still hear all the time that people don't believe in this stuff, and I'm like, you can just try it yourself, like just try it, and you'll definitely notice a difference. If not just for the anti-inflammatory benefits, most people feel improved sleep and improved mood, less agitation, all that stuff. So the medicine speaks for itself. It just still has such a taboo that surrounds it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know from personal experience that CBD definitely can help with all of that. So I definitely agree with you on that. When when you think of the word successful, who is the first person that comes to mind and why?
Hmm.
I stole this one from Tim Ferriss.
You know, I don't think of necessarily one specific person. I just can think of my definition of success is probably a lot different than most people because mine doesn't revolve around money or anything like that. It's just being content and being able to have the freedom of doing what you're doing. I really the guys that I follow are the people that I feel like are successful. So I mean, outside of our niche, the people that we've already been talking about. In fact, Tim Ferriss being one of them. Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, Gary Vee. These guys to me epitomize like I mean they kind of work a little. Just being honest, they work a little bit harder than like my goal for like my entire life.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily want to attain as much financial wealth as these guys have, or I don't desire it. I'm not saying that I would be opposed to it. It's just not my end goal.
Right.
Um, but but to have the freedom to do whatever I want to do, it's like basically Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. Is like the 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 weight lifted off your shoulders when you reach a point where you don't have to worry about your bills anymore. Like, not that you don't have to pay them. Obviously, you still have to pay your bills, but that point when you don't have to think about it anymore, and that you can do what you want to do without having to go, man, I got to really make sure that. Obviously, again, you should have some sort of budget, and I'm not saying to go and blow all your money on garbage. But if there's things that you want to do in life that you genuinely want to do without ever needing to have that thought process of okay, well, can I afford to do this? No, I want to go on this trip. Okay, I can go on this trip. I want to buy, something for someone in my family. Then I can just do this for them without having to, really question it and wonder how is it going to impact your next month's finances. That to me is success, and being able to travel and is so important to me.
I think me and you have pretty much the same exact definition there. So definitely agree with that. If you could have one superpower, would it be and why?
Um, to teleport. I'm telling you, man, travel is so important to me. If I could teleport and always be able to bring someone with me, that would be ideal. I
Uh,
would just be able to go wherever I want and whenever I want. I used to think that I would want to read people's minds, but I think that would just create that would be so stressful
yeah, that
to constantly
sounds.
know others thinking. No thanks, I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'd go crazy. But yeah, teleporting would be great. That would alleviate many of my problems with trying to travel. So that's a good one. I think I'm going to end it off here. We're just around the
Yeah.
hour mark. And if you have any closing remarks, feel free to tell them right now. You can also plug yourself, the social media that you have, even though it'll be in the show notes and it'll be in other places as well. So just give your final remarks and we'll just sign off here.
I'll just do a little bit of. I'm sure most people that are going to be listening are already plant based, but I'm sure you also have some followers that aren't. And just for anybody who's thinking about going plant based, or maybe you've already gone plant based and you're struggling with it a little bit, just give it time. And just choose take a month. Just tell yourself that you can do it for 1 month. And that really goes for anything, any type of habit that you're trying to form. Just say, 30 days. What's the big deal? If I don't like it at the end of 30 days, you can always go back. But I guarantee you, most of the time, after your 30 days is up, you're gonna realize that whatever it was that you're after wasn't that difficult. And it's become so much of a normalcy that you'll probably stick to it. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing for people. And as far as my social media is concerned, the easiest way for to find me and to find anything else that I do is through my Instagram. So if you just look me up on Instagram, it's at MOORE underscore CHRIS. It's just my name at more underscore Chris. And from there, you can hit the link in my bio. It'll bring you to the podcast, YouTube channel, and show you any of the other things that I've got going on. Yep.
Yeah, highly recommend you guys check him out. He's got a lot of the same content as me, and he's doing a lot of big things as well. So, Chris, thank you for being my first guest. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to me. Really appreciate it. I think that went well. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it, and for you thinking of me as your first guest, I really do. I genuinely do appreciate you. And I'll tell anybody that wants to know a little bit more about you, since they're already listening to you. If you're just listening to this episode and you want to hear more of us talking, they can always obviously go check out your and my interview on my podcast and get a little more information about the two of us.
Oh yeah, definitely go check out when Chris interviewed me. All right, man. I will
All right,
sign off
brother.
now. Take care.